Back-to-school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
Hello, everybody. Once again, welcome to another episode of Second and Saints. I'm John Hendricks alongside Ross Jackson.
Hit me.
It's Saturday weekend.
Somehow.
I don't know. This thing's just go by.
Some might
man.
say it's a weekend.
Sure. It's just a football day for me, I guess.
Exactly right.
But you get
what
deeper
day is it?
camp,
It's football day.
Yeah, as you get deeper into training camp, it gets like they start to run together a little bit more.
Yeah.
But day 9 of Saints training camp, I can definitely say that for sure. Or kind of like last padded practice for a little bit. Man, Len, I tell you, as we just kind of jump right into it, Saints offense had their best day by far. Derek Carr threw 5 touchdowns today.
He did.
Spencer Rattler had 6 touchdowns today. Jake Ainer had a couple of touchdowns. But obviously the offense is what stole the show today. Early impressions from day 9.
I thought this was Derek Carr's best practice of training camp so far. And it might have been Derek Carr's best practice as a New Orleans Saint. It was outstanding. I thought he was on one all day. Now, he did have an interception at one point.
Just a great play by Alontae Taylor.
Literally the very, very last play that Derek Carr had an opportunity to do anything. He threw an interception. But as John said, it was really an Alontae Taylor play more than it was a bad Derek Carr play. I don't think I've ever seen Alontae jump that high. I know he can jump, but I don't think I'd ever seen him jump that high. And with the way that he skied up to get that interception was absolutely remarkable. We'll dive into that a little bit later, I'm sure. But Derek Carr, I think, is the lead today because he had his best day, I think, I've seen in a practice environment. He had a couple of really nice games last year, but I think this is the best that I've seen of Derek Carr so far. And so clearly, system, scheme, all that kind of stuff, it's working for him.
Yeah, I think the decision-making was what I think I appreciated. I think I had him finishing, 11-16, which may not sound like it fantastic, but some of the throws, it wasn't there. Throw it into the dirt. You know what I mean? And so I think that was the thing. But he had the big hookup to Chris Olave for 55-yard touchdown. He had the nice one and the slot fade to Alvin Kamara working against Pete Werner for about a 22-yard touchdown. He just made some really good crisp throws, and he also fooled the defense in the goal line, like in the red zone, where he had to play fake inside to Kamara, and everybody thought it was going to 41, and he just bounces out to the left, and Tyrann Mathieu was like, "Come on, man!" Like it was like really, but it was just good to see. Like Derek Carr was on one, but the offense, like this is the point now where we kind of said this on our previous show. Don't forget to like, subscribe, go back to past episodes. We got all the chapters, all the fun stuff. But we said this. Could we see consistency from this offense? Right? Like they had one good day. Could they stack another good day? And I think we got that question answered at day 9. And so I think Derek Carr looked comfortable. And checks notes. This was what we kind of we're expecting with this Clint Kubiak offense. It was catered more to him. He looks comfortable, made some really good throws. Look, he looked good in sevens too, I think. He had a real good decision where he was rolling to the left, made an outstanding throw to Dallin Holker. It was kind of like Lance Moore-esque, if you will. I mean, he just made some really good throws, really good decisions. I thought he looked absolutely comfortable today, and that's what you want to see. And the best thing I think I also appreciate is this was a patched offensive line, meaning they had a lot of different parts and pieces in there today too.
Yeah, and I thought that the offensive line actually played well today. I thought that them being in the situations, we saw a lot of down and distance work today. Something about that just worked for this team over on the offensive side really well. It was like they knew exactly what they wanted to do in each of these situations. And then you could see them kind of counteract the defense pretty well. So it kind of took us back to our early conversation with Landon Young, who spoke a lot about having those rules that the offense was now implementing to where all 11 people had the same expectation based upon what the defensive adjustment was and all that. Derek Carr hooked up with Chris Olave on another touchdown in red zone as well, a little sprint out. So that the reason why I point that out is because that was another example of how the Saints are moving their offensive line over the course of this. When you have those sprint outs, you'll take the snap as a quarterback and then immediately start running either to your left or your right. It kind of depends upon your handedness if you're a right or a left-handed quarterback. And the offensive line just kind of moves with you. And so it helps you kind of move the pocket. We saw them do this with Taysom Hill a lot when Taysom was at quarterback. And I think that those things give you, that's yet another sort of way to maximize the athleticism of your offensive line and get your offense playing on the run and on the move. And I thought that was another thing that worked for them. We actually saw them do a couple of sprint outs today. They really worked on it today. And I thought that was a good thing to see continuously added to the offense here. And the connection between Derek Carr and Chris Olave has been excellent. Chris Olave had a fantastic day today as well. Kind of started back in sevens with a beautiful pass from Jake Haener, but then he had another great day of one-on-ones. I would say 3-0 again because he drew a defensive pass interference penalty on the one where he didn't catch a touchdown. And stuff. And so just a huge day from Chris Olave as well. And if there were two players that you wanted to, that you could walk in and say, okay, on the offensive side of the ball, these two players need to have a big day in order for me to be convinced that the offense is going to be any good. That Derek Carr and Chris Olave is a pretty good nomination for who those players should be.
And doing this all without Rashid Shaheed.
Right. No Rashid
hamstring
Shaheed today,
tightness is what Dennis Allen said. They held him out kind of like as a precaution, gave him the day off. So he hopefully should be back on Sunday. Check notes. I forgot what day today is for a second. So, again, I think that's the biggest thing. And you mentioned the offensive lineman, but we've looked now, too, at this offense. It's not just the offensive line. Like, they're moving more running backs in the backfield. They're giving all sorts of deceptive looks. They're putting wide receivers in the backfield. They're using them as decoys. I mean, there are a lot of moving parts and pieces to this Clint Kubiak offense, and it's exciting to see it unfold. And it's even more exciting when it works, right? So I think with Carr, just the way he's able to come in, because we know he's going to be starter. I know all those things that surface and all that other stuff, but this is what New Orleans needs to have happen. Like, we know the defense, we feel pretty good about where the defense is at right now. We were worried about the offensive line and worried about some of the offense could get more production. But, I think the only thing that's kind of missing from this offense is still who's the wide receivers that step up, right? And I think that's the biggest thing. And, they're doing this too without Juwan Johnson. So I think this is also another big thing is like Holker getting some targets. Foster Moreau had a good one in sevens too, where he just got wide open somehow. I don't know how you don't get him in a route too, but, just seeing Carr using all the motion. And the biggest thing is, like all the offensive linemen we've talked to and all the people, it puts their best players in a position to do what they're supposed to do. I think that's the most encouraging thing that we've seen.
I literally have that note written down, putting stars in position to make plays.
It's using some ESP, I guess.
Look at us.
ESP?
I thought that it was a really good practice day for them. And I think too, we've seen more and more of this offense now, just all the new things that they're doing. You and I both kind of perked up to a play to where they overloaded the left side. Then they motioned one player from the left side to the right side. And then immediately after that player got settled, they motioned another player from the left side to the right side. And then so they then overloaded the right side, but then they ran to the left side. And so it's just a lot of like misdirection and all these other things. I think a lot of folks assume, because this is how sometimes you do it in video games, to where like you go up to the line of scrimmage, you read the defense, and then you motion somebody based upon what you see from the defense. That's not typically the way that it works. Typically, when that player finishes the motion, that's really the start of the play. And so you're going out there with that motion already intent on happening for a specific purpose. So we also saw a couple times to where they took the field, and then you saw like Adam Prentice line up in the slot, but then he motioned from the slot into the backfield on an offset eye. The offset eye was the intent of the play. That's where you're going to snap the ball from. That's the way that it's drawn up. But you add the motion there so that you can find out what you need to know about your box, what you need to know about your what your defense is doing, or if the safeties are going to change or rotate, or if the defensive line is going to adjust because you have somebody going from the slot into the backfield and all those other things. You're trying to kind of get those reactions from the defense, but then also challenge the defense. I like the way that Alontae Taylor talked about it on Friday when he was mentioning that what the Saints are doing on offense now reminds him of that Rams game last year, which was not a great game for Alontae. Remember, he got benched during that game. Then he had to end up going back out, but it wasn't a great game for him. But he remembered his eyes being challenged, the eye discipline, having to watch all the eye candy and all the different motion and all that kind of stuff. And he feels very much like this New Orleans Saints offense is doing a lot of those same things now. Yeah, and the defense, conversely, is communicating more out there. I think more so than what we have, and that's the good thing about this offense too, is it keeps them on their toes a lot. You know what I mean? And so defense had its moments, but clearly wasn't doing as much chirping as they have been in the past several days. The offense was just kind of riding them a little bit. Jamal Williams is out there, Foster Moreau. If you're at practice, you can't not hear Foster Moreau. You know what I mean? Yeah, He's just out there with a vengeance sometimes. And so, look, the offense, it was good to see that. But what I'm most encouraged by is it's a second straight day where they look pretty good. Yeah. And I got to tell you, too, I hone in on Trevor Penning. I thought he looked good today. I thought he looked comfortable. He had 2 really good pass pro reps. He had a really good run support rep, but he's also doing it against other defenders. It's not just Carl Granderson, Isaiah Foskey. He's been able to kind of climb the ladder. But again, and I've seen some people on social media I'll believe it when I see it and stuff. And I get that. That's fair. Yeah, for sure. That's fair. I think that's a fair assessment because it's the same way with the Saints. And we've talked about this on past shows. It's all good right now in camp. But does it lead to wins? Right. Does it mean that this team's going to be a 10 or 11 win team and be in the playoffs? That's all that matters, I guess, right now. And so, but it is encouraging to see Trevor Penning kind of take a little bit more leap. He does look a lot more comfortable, not just in the run support, like you kind of talked about how he does fit in really well, but the pass protection as well. Yeah, big time. I thought Taliesin had a really nice day today, too. I thought he was strong on a couple of reps, had to really, really dig deep up against Chase Young a couple of times, but did it. And looked really good. I felt really good about what we saw from the tackles today. We saw a little bit more rotation at left guard. Originally, Eric McCoy was in it. I mean, not originally, but as is typically the case, Eric McCoy was in at center. He had a veteran rest day a couple of days ago, so we're just tracking that. But with Shane Lemieux back, he ended up rotating in along with Lucas Patrick, Ali Udo, and then we also saw, of course, Landon Young there for a little while too. So, otherwise, pretty much what you would expect on the offensive line, particularly for the first team. So it's good to kind of see, all right, we're starting to figure out okay, well, they always want this person here, that person there, all these other things. So things are kind of sliding in place. And I think it's really helpful that Penning doesn't play anywhere else. Fuanga doesn't play anywhere else. They just focus on what they're doing. And I think that that's benefiting them big time. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I know that the defense wants to believe that interception that Alontae made in the end zone was beautiful. I mean, it was trying to corner. Alontae just makes he just kind of went superhuman Shaq jump. You know what I mean? Just goes up and makes an excellent play on the ball. But I bring that up because Fuaga was there in pursuit. I don't know Alontae was going to go because I was really surprised by how fast Fuaga was and the awareness too. I think he would have got it.
I think so.
This is a red zone drill, and they were within the 10. And so Fuaga is coming from pretty deep and has to pick the right angle and all this stuff. But I thought he did a pretty good job with it. Yeah. I did love though the fact that the interception happened. Alontae kind of slowed down as if he was going to take a knee in the end zone kind of a thing. And then the coaches, the defensive coaches were like, go get a touchdown. Yeah. Go get a touchdown. Now, go. Yes. And then so Alontae booked it and started sprinting downfield. And I loved that from the defensive coaching staff of, no, don't settle. Yeah. Don't settle. There's more to do here. This is practice. Go get yourself a touchdown. Get down there. And I loved that. I thought that was cool because we felt all of this competitive nature from this team. Yeah. Yes. And I think it's the most competitive training camp that I've seen from this team over the course of the past few years. And moments like that are oh, okay, that's a top-down situation. Yeah. The coaches want them doing this. And so I love that. I love the no, don't settle. Go. Get a score a touchdown. Go. I love that. I thought that was great. I don't think I've seen as a competitive camp as we have. Yeah, I just don't. For sure. I know that we've seen some competitiveness, but just the fact it's not just one person chirping. It's this is a legit offense, defense kind of hating each other. You see, I think I saw Chase Young getting after it a little bit too today, and I love seeing Chase Young just kind of jawing with everybody. He got in Hayner's face on one rep. Him and Granderson and Jamal have been back and forth all week.
Something. and again, of course, there's limitations with this. You don't want to see anybody get hurt or anything like that. But again, it's what separates the men from the boys. And honestly, for a team that needs to get, as Dennis Allen sometimes says, their swagger back, if you will.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that I look forward to seeing. You know what I mean? Like, be more dominant in the trenches, be more authoritative, do what you got to do that produces a winner at the end of the day. And so we'll see if that obviously translates into anything, because again, we're out here, we're telling you all this stuff, and it could all go to the wayside and not look good the first several weeks. We don't know. I also don't want to overlook Spencer Rattler.
Yeah,
strong day from him.
Really
like a super strong. And he was third on the depth chart today. And now I've already seen his, like, where's he at in terms of Hainer? We talked about that on Friday's episode, that we still think that, Hainer was in the lead. But I got to say, the biggest thing that I had yesterday was, could Hainer do it again today? But I was encouraged because Rattler stacked the day today for me. And he did it in a big way. A lot of good red zone connections for touchdowns. You had that one to A.T. Perry over the middle. That was a good one, a hookup. Man, he just looked comfortable. And again, navigating the pocket, just making decisions. I really liked what I saw from Spencer Rattler on the third team today.
Yeah, I thought he has had two of, when it comes down to him and Hainer, they've both been pretty much, pretty stagnant so far throughout camp. But I think Rattler has had the bigger peaks.
Yes.
I think Hainer had a nice day yesterday, but I think Rattler's had the bigger peaks. And so when I think about, the question that came through here from 73 is, who would you say is edging out the quarterback 2 battle between Rattler and Hainer? I just don't think that that's going to be decided in training camp. It's going to be more about preseason. So I don't think either one of them has an edge yet, because I don't think either one of them has been consistently impressive at any point. But I do think that Rattler had the most impressive day today out of the two of them.
Michael Jacobson season 2.
Yeah, man, he really leaned on Michael
Jacobson
in sevens. And that's been Michael Jacobson's game, is the 7-on-7 game, man. He's a big target there.
Man,
6'6", big dude, big tight end, big strong hands, all that good stuff. Like he's been awesome there. But yeah, no, I really liked Rattler's stuff today. I really liked his throw selection and everything too. I thought that his decision making was really good and on point. I thought that he didn't put the ball in harm's way at all. I thought that he continued to just find things in rhythm. He does a very good job when he gets in rhythm. We saw him get in the rhythm yesterday. It kind of felt like he carried that over today.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember this question we got, a couple episodes ago. It was regarding, how does Isaiah Foskey look compared to year one? And it was just one of those things where I said, kind of based it off of what we've seen in camp. And why I bring that up is Rattler reminds me a lot about what Hainer looked like kind of at first.
Yeah.
And stuff. Like, he kind of had some of those days where he looked really, really sharp. And, again, the problem with Hainer is he didn't finish it and kind of put it into the preseason.
Right.
And that's the thing is. And so it's like, I do like that Rattler's getting more comfortable, that he does look more comfortable, but he's making those throws. But, when it comes to Arizona, how does he look? What does that look like? And so I think that's kind of where I kind of go for that. And again, it's going to be fascinating because we're, a week away from the first preseason game now? Oh, and this time next week, we'll be getting close to that Arizona game. And so, again, I'm really interested to see what that split share is going to be like. Do we see the starters? Well, how much of the starters do we see? Can this team stay healthy? And then I really want to see a lot more of Spencer Rattler and where he goes. And the other part of it, too, is Jake Hainer, I don't know if it's the difficulty of the offense or the play calling, but another couple rehuddles for him today.
Yeah.
It's been a common theme. It's happened with Rattler too, but more so, I think, Hainer throughout this camp.
Yeah, I think one of the rehuddles was because Mason Tipton was in when he wasn't supposed to be in. It was like a
Wrong
personnel thing
right.
and stuff like that. And so Keith Williams was not very happy about that. New Orleans Saints wide receiver coach. But yeah, we've seen a few of those. And so that's going to be a big thing to watch between that. And I think we've seen some false starts with him under center too.
Yeah.
And so I think that there was a delay of game at one point that they called with him. So I would just watch out for that when it comes to the preseason and his ability to kind of be able to get in and out of the huddle. That's something that the Saints stress. And the play calling's shorter, all this stuff. And so I'm not sure exactly what it is that has given them some trouble sometimes, but whatever it is, I think that the preseason will put a big time kind of microscope on that so that we'll get to see if that's a lingering issue or if that's just something that's happened kind of in the practice environment. Yeah,
and it begs the question, how much of the Clinton Kubiak offense are we going to see? You know what I mean? How much of the playbook are you going to open up a little bit here? And so I think remains to be seen, obviously, but I'm so excited that by next Saturday, we're going to be seeing a real game with action and get to see all these players hopefully ball out a little bit. Man. And so, not that I was trying to intentionally segue, but some of the guys that I thought balled out today, I have to start with Khaleke Hudson.
Oh, yeah, I got him written down too.
Exceptional today. And for those who don't know, Khaleke Hudson is a guy that was kind of buried on the depth chart last year with the Commanders. They had injury problems. He gets to start kind of sort of the back half, and he just blew it up for them. And, they realized what they had in him too late. But today, he's kind of maybe look linebacker 5 because I think DeMarco Jackson obviously would be clearly behind the big 3. But, maybe it's Khaleke Hudson right there in that mix. But I got to say, he was there for run stops. He was there good in coverage. He was just all over the place. And so, again, he's a name that you look at that linebacker group. Anthony Orji is who we talked about yesterday. But it was a Khaleke Hudson day on defense for that linebacking group.
Yeah, he had a really nice day. I thought that he looked really good. My under-the-radar guy today was Samson Nacua.
And this is a guy that I know you were really good. Yeah, that you were really excited about too. This is Puka Nakua's older brother. But he's a 6'3", 200+ pound wide receiver that the Saints brought in because they're doing a lot of injuries at the position. And he just moves a lot more fluidly than I thought he would. He's a lot more of a subtle route runner than I thought he was. He looked really good in one-on-ones in particular, but then he's also got this big frame that you can target in the red zone and all that. So I really thought that he was a guy that you could see the value of what he would be able to bring as an athlete. And as a bigger body, kind of a sure-handed guy. And so just an interesting one to look out for. Cedric Wilson did make his return and did score a touchdown at one point in red zone drills and things like that. So it was good to see Cedric Wilson back out there, who has kind of been the favorite for wide receiver 3. Mason Tipton, on the other hand, kind of a little bit of a lesser day-to-day than what we're accustomed to.
Yeah, he looked good in one-on-ones for the most part, but, yeah, well, not as much. And so, and as another guy, like we talked about, Marquez Callaway kind of shining a little bit yesterday, but he didn't really do it today. And then, of course, they, waived injured Jermaine Jackson. That's tough because, I know we talked about him, kind of having a pretty bad day at camp, but then you get hurt, and then the next day you're cut, right? I mean, that's tough. But, this has been a revolving door for receivers and offensive linemen kind of, and tight ends too. They added a couple after tryouts yesterday. And so it's somebody like a Samson Nacua. Can he make the roster? I mean, I don't know because we don't have Equinemius St. Brown out of here. We don't have Bub Means. And so that is concerning for me, is that if we don't start seeing Bub Means more or Equinemius St. Brown, they might have a problem in the wide receiver room. And so it's something we've talked about and kind of a little bit concerned about on this team. I mean, could you imagine right now, if they're having to start a healthy core, Callaway's probably in that mix.
Yeah, probably.
Stanley Morgan's in that mix, maybe Cedric Wilson if he could stay there, but maybe it's Nacua, maybe it's Mason Tipton. I don't know, but it's a little bit unsettling at that position. But at the same time, they do have some players who are really stepping up, like you mentioned, Nacua for sure. Yeah. So it's only going to come in time. I also thought low-key Roderick Teamer had a pretty good day.
Yeah, he really did. He's a great communicator.
I think he could be somebody that ends up sneaking on if he keeps it up, like a special teams guy. I don't know. We don't talk much about JT Gray, but he made some good special teams plays today. And so I think if he keeps doing that, he's, we might have put him as a bubble candidate, but I don't think so. But I made the comment today. I was like, they always bring in those players at the last minute who end up doing it. This is this year's Lynn Bowden for me in a way. It's very premature, but if he continues, he's getting some first team reps and such. So I don't know. It could be anybody else that kind of really stood out to you.
Yeah, I wrote down a couple other names. Oh wait, no, I've said them already. Well, the names that I wrote down, I've already said.
But I did actually have somebody else. I thought too that it was another good showing for Kool-Aid today.
Yeah,
he was challenged a little bit more today, which I thought was good. And even though he gave up a couple of catches and all that, I thought that him and Mason Tipton have usually been the battle 84-34 for whatever reason, and the way that they line up for one-on-ones and stuff like that. But I thought that he defended a lot better today. And then, he had a really, really, look, when you're
going up against, who was he going up against? It was Will Harris, and I think it was Alante, maybe.
You're talking about one
in the Gunners.
Gunners.
Gunner and Jammer drills.
Yeah.
But it was
that was tough, and that's always going to be tough when you have those guys and Jordan Howden. That's what
solid in that rep
too.
Yeah.
And when you have those guys in front of you as jammers while you're trying to play gunner, they're gonna make your life hard.
Yeah.
But it was cool to see him kind of like fight through that, because he did have some good him and Will Harris both had nice moments throughout that, as in the midst of trying to return and all those other things, or trying to get down the field and all those other things. So that was another pretty solid day for him. And I think it's so fun watching him, man, because he's like such a good fit for the defense, but then he also has all the special teams acumen and all this other stuff that I thought that was nice to see.
I think polished is probably where I'm not sitting here saying try to crown him, but I think where he looks at his game and stuff, it is a very polished player, and I don't need him to like go make picks every single practice or do anything. But, you see him, the positioning, and that's something I pointed out really early and in camp, was the fact that how fluid his movements are, how quick he can turn, all these different things. Yeah. And so, again, I think I look at more at, those are the part of the aspects. I'm not saying he has to make plays, and he's getting some of these developmental reps too. Like they continue to do this type of developmental period after the big team drills and stuff. So, he's another one that I'm really excited to see. I think he's going to get a lot of snaps when it comes to the game against the Cardinals.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
Yeah, I think it's we're seeing how the depth chart, like they'll have the unofficial depth chart that everybody's going to overreact to and stuff coming out here in the next few days.
Of course, the unofficial depth chart.
Yeah, but I think Kool-Aid's going to get a significant amount of time outside. And, if they do decide to run nickel in preseason, I think he could also get some time in the slot too. But I think Ugo Amadi's probably the guy that ends up doing it too. So.
Yeah, I think Will Harris might be in there too.
I agree
there as well. We also learned that in other special team drills, we learned that Nico Lalos is faster than Jack Heflin.
Yeah, poor Jack Heflin. I don't think he had a chance.
He didn't have a chance, man. That
DT
was crazy.
The end. I mean, I know he gave it his all, but
yes, he did. Yes, he did.
He sure did. 100%
did. That was so funny. Like, because these special teams reps and stuff like that. Like, it's bathroom break and all this other stuff sometimes, but for these players, like they treated that rep like it was one of the biggest reps. I'm not just talking about Jack Heflin and Nico Lalos, by the way. I'm talking about like the starters that were around watching, the players that were around watching. Like they cheered and championed that rep like crazy. Yeah. That was so cool. That was so fun. I thought that was awesome too. Cool. Just every chance that these guys get to compete, they're competing.
Yeah, and again, he's another one that can make a case for himself.
He was a star in the preseason last year, man.
And you look to shape out that practice squad. I've really been happy with what I've seen from Christian Boyd, and so I think he's definitely, they got Brian Brzee back. He was there yesterday, but he participated in individual drills as well as team today. And so there was a brief little scare with Nathan Shepard, but he didn't leave the field and stuff. So Lucas Patrick did leave a little bit early too, so that's something we'll obviously keep. But I did see him afterwards and seemed to be okay. But these things happen.
We're not fully sure if he left because of an injury or because it was like
something else. It could be tires, fatigue. Who knows?
After the final like team drill happened, and then all the team came together, and it was when they all came together, he left, and then they went back to the developmental reps and stuff like that. So he kind of left a little bit early, or maybe slightly earlier than that. But so we're not super sure, but we'll see if he's out there tomorrow. But Shane Lemieux was back as well today too, and back into the offensive line taking team reps and stuff, so he got involved.
I heard something interesting just talking to people around the building and stuff is like, I know we make a lot about this move to California and stuff, but they put it in kind of perspective that like training camp last year in Metairie, they had about 30 players on IVs the first couple of days. Like this camp, they haven't had any. Like I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, I know it's like not, but just you look at Louisiana, the heat and all this other stuff. It's been a little bit refreshing for some of these guys too. And that's, I know it's not like ideal because Alante even tweeted out, "I miss the fans." And today there was a lot of friends and family, and they were some of the plays that were made were big time. And he had a special reason to chirp because of his pick that he got. So
yeah, for sure.
No Jalen Ford for a second straight day. I did see him kind of walking out, observing a little bit. Again, Kendre Miller's another observer in practice, and so he's somebody that needs to get back in the field. I don't know if he's going to be ready for this Cardinals game, but it's Jordan Mims. I thought James Robinson had a pretty decent day overall.
Yeah, he had a really nice cutback to the backside of a play. Ended up being able to pick up some big yards there. Yeah, I like what we're seeing from James Robinson. And you talked about him as somebody that's done it before. I mean, he's been a 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL before.
Yeah.
And so if you put him in the right situation and you're able to unlock something like that, you don't need 1,000 yards from him, of course. But if you can get that production from, or not that production from him, but if you can get that skill set out of him again, then you'll definitely take that. Sure. So I think it's going to be, I mean, I agree with you. I don't know if Kendrick's going to be back in time to be a part of this Cardinals game. And that could be of big time detriment for him because Dennis Allen loves what he's seeing from Jordan Mims. They're a fan of what they're seeing from James Robinson as well. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But I'm excited to see what this running back group looks like on the field because there's such a gap. I mean, if we're being honest, there's such a gap between Alvin Kamara and the rest of the running backs.
Yeah, you pointed that out the other day for sure.
And I think that probably shouldn't be super surprising either because it is Alvin Kamara who's looking explosive. He's looking elusive. He's making big plays. He's doing all this stuff. He's involved in every element of the game, all that. But yeah, I think the other guy that's been the most consistently impressive so far has been Jordan Mims. He's got to get better at the pass protection side. But if he's able to do that to any extent, I think that ends up moving the needle quite a bit. And so it could make things really interesting. Again, I think Kendre Miller makes the roster, but it doesn't mean that he has to be the only other running back outside of Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams to make the roster.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting how they use some of those designations because, as they get closer to camp, if we don't see him, he could put on that. Was it the reserve pup? I guess, if you will,
they could probably
similar, not what happened to Ryan Ramczyk, but there's a window where players like Tano we expect to go on that list that you have I think it's 8 weeks into the season that you have to activate them or not, or they permanently stay on IR and stuff. Yeah. So
I think with Kendre though, what they'd have to do is they'd have to put him on IR at roster cuts. Yeah. Everything like that. That way you don't end this season beforehand, but because he's already participated, I don't know that you can put him on PUP. And so it would be tough, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they manage it because you're all right. There's a lot of things that they can do. They can carry him on to 53 and then move in the injured reserve. Now you can put 2 players in injured reserve at the time of roster cuts, which is really helpful. So we'll see the way that they go about it because Tano might just start the season on the active PUP and then he's got, a gap before he's able to before they can try to bring him back and stuff like that. And so that might end up opening the spots where you can put Kendre on injured reserve for the beginning of the season if you needed to, if he doesn't make it back.
Yeah. I thought about this too. We had a question on yesterday's show or question after the fact in one of the comments that fullback battle update. Do you have anybody ahead of each other?
Not really. I think they've both been getting a lot of work, and we typically say Ty goes to the runner. Yeah. And so I guess that would mean because there's not much separation, Adam Prentice is there. But, when I spoke with Derek Foster, I asked about this battle because Derek Foster and Xander Horvath go back to Los Angeles together. And actually they go back before that when Xander was at Purdue, Derek Foster was at Iowa. And so they knew of each other a bunch. He recruited, all this other stuff, everything. And that was when Xander Horvath was still playing running back at that time. He was playing running back in college. And then he transitioned to fullback when they got him over to Los Angeles. And he looks at both Xander Horvath and Adam Prentice as very different players. There's an overlap in terms of the role, right? You got to be able to block. You got to be able to run routes. You got to be able to catch. You got to be able to do all this other stuff. You got to be able to run, blah, blah, blah. But he does look at them as very different players. Yeah. So really what it all kind of comes down to is which mold do they decide that they want to fill, which I think is actually kind of interesting for the mentality of the battle because the guys might not get picked based upon who performs how. Yeah. It might just be what archetype of fullback do they want and then who meets the qualifications.
Yeah. Adam Prentice reminds me more of the traditional fullback. The player that keeps popping in mind for Xander Horvath, Zach Zinner.
Oh, yeah.
That's
for sure.
Who reminds me of a little bit.
Yeah.
And some fans don't know who that is and stuff. But, he had a brief spell here in New Orleans. But that's kind of who they mold of him, I guess, if you will. But Horvath's a little bit more quick and twitchy, whereas Prentice is built like a big old Dodge truck, from the past.
Call him a sixth offensive lineman.
Yeah, literally, he could be. And so they sometimes try to use him in the passing game or maybe the rare run. But, again, this fullback is going to matter in this Clint Kubiak office. And look, I've given my thoughts on what that could be look like for the final roster and stuff. But, there's no really big takeaway. This is something I think we got to watch more in the preseason for sure. And like I said, Ty goes to runner. I still think that's the case at the moment, but that could change obviously on a dime. Special teams day, I think, Groupie struggled a little bit, and this was from long range, but it's like one of his first misses from inside 40 yards. That was a little bit concerning for me. The ones from 59, just not there. And so that was one thing, but I think we saw some good gunner reps when Lou Hedley punted. Mm-hmm. He had 2 punts that went out of bounds. It just didn't look too good, but he had a decent day. But what else stood out in special teams for you?
I think it covers it for special teams for me. I think that the big thing that I was paying attention to today was the punting and seeing what Lou Hedley looked like. And I agree. He had a couple that flew off that felt shanky. But he had another couple that were fielded really well. I mean, he had one that was fielded by JT Gray very well. He had another one that was fielded by A.T. Perry very well. He had another one that was fielded by Lawrence Johnson very well. And so there was a lot of these good punts that were inside the 5, inside the 10. They really provided a lot of opportunity. I want to go back to something that you mentioned real quick, just about the fullback being important in this offense. Yeah. Because it reminded me of something that happened after practice. So just thinking about what's important in this offense, we know that tight end is going to be very important in this offense. That was really interesting. And I admitted to Dallin Holker that I was trying to trap him with a question. I admitted to him after the fact. I walked over to him and I was like, here's what I was trying to get you to say. So what happened was that Dallin was kind of talking about watching cut-ups of George Kittle over the course of the offseason. And so I asked him the question, were those cut-ups that you found on your own volition? Or were those cut-ups that were given to you by the team? And he said there were cut-ups that were given to him by the team. And so I was like, hold on. So wait, they just handed you George Kittle cut-ups? It was here's your role. You know what I mean? And I was like, dang, that's a lot of pressure. And so I was asking him about that. And then he was like, you know what? Look, I'm sure my role will become more, defined at a later time and all those other things. Right now, I'm just focused on trying to make the team. Very good answer. Yeah. But I told him, I was trying to figure out, they just hand you George Kittle clips and we're like, here you go, buddy.
Yeah, right.
Guess what you're doing in this offense? I was like, dang, that's some high expectations.
Big time.
But I mean, when you think about it, the things that he's trying to get better at, he's a good route runner. He's a good pass catcher. He's trying to develop further as a run blocker. If he can do all those things, it's going to be really hard to keep him off the field. Yeah. Because that's what you want. You want a guy that can do everything. And so if he shows that he can do that, he should have a major role in this offense, much like that fullback.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up, Brad. Well, there's nobody Brad. But I did have a note in here. It was a Jordan Mims run to the outside. It got to the second level. He had a really nice block on Willie Gay Jr. on the edge. So I think we pointed out some of his blocking yesterday or Friday for those who are listening to the show. Yeah. But I did notice that he's getting a little bit more refined in the blocking department. And look, we don't talk a lot about Clancy Barone, but we kind of know behind the scenes that he's worked with some really good tight ends in the past. Algie Crumpler, Kyle Rudolph, just some of the guys that has been Pro Bowlers under him. And, a guy like that, you've mentioned before that this is their 8th round pick. And look, he doesn't need to be George Kittle because once Juwan comes back in this offense, but I think him and Juwan could make a nice little attack in the passing game for sure. And look, we've seen Foster Moreau get more active in the passing game too. And so Foster's the guy that does the dirty work. I think when Juwan gets back, he'll do a little bit of everything, but more your primary passing catch threat. And then, Holker can be that wild card where they can get him. And we saw it plenty in OTA's minicamp where he can find that soft spot in the coverage and stuff and just get open. But in order for him to be better long-term, he's definitely got to get that blocking where it needs to be. But I've been encouraged by what I've seen from him too.
Yeah, same. He's been a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, by all means, I think this is a pretty straightforward practice. I mean, the offense just looked outstanding today. I think, like we said, Derek Carr had his best day probably with the Saints, and Spencer Rattler, accordingly, I think he had one of his best days, maybe his best day at camp for sure. Yeah, and so a lot of people ate today, right? Yeah. A lot of people got in the end zone. I liked A.T. Perry. Look, A.T. had a better bounce back day yesterday. Started a little bit slow, but I think he finished strong today.
I like seeing the composure of struggling early and then finishing strong.
I think we talked to somebody. It's like I think he's kind of doing the Isaiah Foskey here in camp. I think he's overthinking some of the things. It's like, here's where I need to be. Here's all this stuff instead of just going out there and playing. So I think Perry can turn it on a little bit more. And again, one of the many that we want to see in that preseason game against the Cardinals. But, it's something to point out. So,
Got a couple of questions here, two that I can answer very quickly.
Sure,
because we've kind of hit them already. But I don't want to leave anybody out. Nico,
Cam Jordan had a planned day of rest. Let me point that out. No DeMario again, hamstring issue. So we're going to keep tabs, but nothing yet to update on that.
Yeah. We also had Jawan join during team drills, watching off to the side. So he was another spectator today. Nico Healy asking about what's the offensive line look like. Pretty simple for this one. I mean, the offensive line we thought looked better today. Tackle play between Trevor Penning and Taliese Fuanga looked pretty good. Saw a continued rotation over at left guard. You're good at center and right guard. I thought when it comes to the first team offensive line, it was probably one of their better practices today.
Yeah. No, I agree. And Oli Udoh is getting a little bit more reps at left guard now, and they're starting to rotate in Shane Lemieux sometimes at center. And so, again, Udoh and Lemieux, like we talked about, like Landon Young and Lucas Patrick kind of being that 6th and 7th offensive lineman. So I think it depends if they keep 8 or 9. But, Udoh and Shane Lemieux would be in that conversation for sure.
Completely agreed. Nico also asked about how's Jamal Williams. I thought Jamal Williams has been fiery. He's been fiery.
Don't get on Jamal Williams' bad side, y'all.
Do not.
I'm not saying that we have. I'm just saying, like, as a defense is hearing like every bit of Jamal Williams, and he didn't let up. Like, I knew it was going to carry over from yesterday. I could just see it, and so it was a bit fire from Jamal Williams. But I think it's a good question in the sense of like his role in the offense is he's getting some looks, he's getting some touches. It's maybe not as explosive as we want it to be necessarily, but he is important when it comes to that pass protection and third downs. And look, they're using, like I pointed out early on one of the notes, is that they used him. It was like they faked it to him on the inside, and they did like this little flip out play to Taysom Hill. And so I think they're going to use a lot of him this year. And again, I think he's in the plans. I don't know that you have to worry about his roster spot, but again, another player I want to see in the preseason do a little bit more.
Yeah, big time. This question comes from Tumadre. No, seriously, it comes from Tumadre. It says, should fans be concerned about the inconsistency, if that's a fair word, from the offensive line? I think today we've kind of highlighted like the positives around the offensive line. I think the inconsistency is going to be there at this time. I'd be more worried if the inconsistency showed throughout these upcoming preseason game practice weeks when they hit like a more typical game prep rhythm and all those other things. I'm not super concerned about it yet. I wouldn't want them to field an offensive line right now.
Sure.
A regular season offensive line right now, but I think that they'll be in a better place.
2 days in a row, I think they've looked pretty good. Like they haven't been a problem like they were the previous day when they just like let everybody through with that NASCAR package. So anybody could have got a sack the other day.
Yeah, I completely agreed. This is an interesting one. Do you think that Ryan Ramczyk would be able to help the progress of the young players if he was there to player/coach capacity? I don't know. The thing that's always so interesting about questions like this is that we assume that because a player is good at what they do, that they can teach it. And that's not always the case. Right. That's not always the case. In fact, a lot of players will tell you, I have no interest in coaching because they feel that they can't do that. So I thought it was an interesting question, but I genuinely don't know because like right now, Ryan Ramczyk is focused on like him, his life, his potential life after football potentially and all these other things. Like there's a lot of stuff that's going on with all that. So I love the respect and the question of like, hey, if he were doing this, would it work? But I really don't know. I think it's easy to say, because you expect that a guy that's good at something can teach that thing, but it's just not always the case.
I mean, Jari Evans is a great example of that now. Like he's
can do
it right now. I don't know. I mean, I think that football might be the furthest thing from Ryan Ramczyk's mind right now. And, we see so many of these offensive linemen, once they do hang it up, how much weight they drop. Like Max Unger, I remember him one year, like Nate Newton from the Cowboys a long time ago. Like they don't even look like the same people. And so, look, we're not expecting Ryan Ramczyk probably to play football ever again. But, at the same time, he's definitely not playing this year. He's going to be worried about all his other stuff. So I don't know if we'll see him ever this year at any point in any stage. But it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Do the Saints need to trade for a wide receiver 3? This is a really interesting one.
Trade?
The part that makes the trade thing tough is that, first of all, you have to have you have to give up the ground that you've made in the salary cap in order to be able to do that. They've made up some ground that I think that they really like. The other thing is you have to give up assets. And right now this team needs its draft assets because you're typically not going to trade player for player. Those are very rare in the NFL. And so giving up the draft assets, probably what you'd have to do for the trade, probably not something the Saints are super interested in right now. And then I also don't know where you get a wide receiver 3 from either. Like, I don't know where you go, who you go to, what team is going to shell out their wide receiver 3 in a passing league and all these other things. And so not to say that there isn't anybody out there, but it's hard to come up with an idea of who you would target in that situation.
I'm grinning because I saw, on Facebook, which is a fantastic place to get all your sports information because of anything that goes out there, is like somebody wrote an article saying the Saints are in on this DeAndre Hopkins thing. I'm like, come on, y'all. I said, first of all, DeAndre Hopkins is injured. Second of all, it's not happening. Like, I think, but going back to realistic talk, yes, there still are free agents available. But one other thing that I think we probably overlook, and most people do, is that, the director of player personnel, the pro personnel, every time somebody's like waived, especially in final cuts, the Saints have like this board that they use and operate off of. So it's like if somebody were to get available in final cuts, they would pick them up potentially. Not like that's the desired outcome, but given the health of this group right now, super concerned about their long-term status. Like, again, we haven't seen anything from Bub Means really, not much of anything. And Equinemi St. Brown being hurt and Cedric Wilson Jr. just got hurt. Now Rashid Shaheed's dealing with something. It's like this wide receiving core can't take any more. You know what I'm saying? Like Jermaine Jackson, all this stuff, like the Dave Chappelle and Nutty Professor. Enough silence. I can't take this no more. Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, really good.
You got any more before we get out?
Yeah, I think this will be our last one here. Will Clint Kubiak call plays? I think this is a good question because I don't know that we've really ever talked about it before. But yes, he will be the play caller for the New Orleans Saints offense.
Yeah, we've seen, I think I pointed this out sometimes that, in drills, Andrew Janaka will go over there and kind of relay some plays to the quarterback. And then, like I pointed out yesterday, that during the developmental period, Denarius McGee was calling some plays, and they had somebody else new doing it today. Assistant today. So they're getting some exposure. But no, Clint Kubiak's going to be the guy in charge. What I'm interested to see is he going to be on the field or what? Because Joe Woods, when he calls a game, he does it up in the booth. So it's something that's like, is Clint going to be upstairs calling it, or is he going to be, downstairs? Because I could see him potentially being upstairs calling it, and Janako's kind of that person presence on the field. So that is an interesting wrinkle, and I do want to see that in preseason.
Yeah, I am really interested to see that. I don't think we've seen a booth shot of a play caller for New Orleans.
Because Sean did it all the time.
Because Sean was always doing it on the field. Pete was down on the field. And then even with Joe Woods, DA's doing the play calling in the regular season. And so he's always down on the field. So we haven't really seen the booth play caller and everything like that. So I'd be really interested to see if that's the way that the Saints go. It's a really good question.
About as curious as I am about Clint Kubiak's how many plays does he have in the playbook question. So yeah. Still finding that out.
Yeah. One last one, actually, because this is good. Are the Saints running a lot of 3 wide receiver sets? If so, it doesn't really matter. If not, does wide receiver 3 really matter? Wilson, Perry are good enough situationally. Here's the thing that I would say is that like you're going to run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets no matter what in the NFL. You're going to run 11 personnel. That's your third down play set, like all these other things. So that's why wide receiver 3 is going to matter no matter what. You're going to see a lot more 2 wide receiver sets, I think, for New Orleans than you have in the past. But I still think you're going to see more than 50% of this offense run out of 3 wide receiver sets, more than likely, or maybe I'll say more than 40%, but I think 50% is also safe because it's probably your most typical your most typical personnel grouping across the NFL right now.
Yeah. And I mean, Cedric Wilson Jr. is a guy who's been playing in the slot, and maybe they put Shaheed in the slot and put Perry on the outside. They could do that. Like they could mix and match it. And that's another thing, just like without getting in the weeds, how much different personnel does this team use? Because they did this like they had the leading like combinations in the NFL under Pete Carmichael, Sean Payton and stuff. So I'm interested to see what Kubiak does on that one. But, it begs the question. I don't know if we're getting so much into wide receiver 3, 4, and 5 because each of them are going to have their chance to do something, I imagine. But, who is it going to be? I don't know. Whoever stays available and healthy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, at this point, for sure.
So as we wind down, obviously we want to thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Second and Saints. Don't forget about the August 8th meetup, which is right around the corner for us at Bourbon Street Bar and Grill over in Fullerton. Calling all Saints fans in the SoCal area. Come hang out with us. Got some merch giveaways. And we're going to do a show there. Probably going to do some Q&A with fans and stuff. And just hang out. You know what I mean? Like that's really the goal. And, it could be 10 people and we'll be happy. It could be 100 people and we'll be happy. And if it's more than that, well, I don't know what we're going to do. But, I don't know if that's going to happen. But hey, if you're SoCal Saints fan, come on in. Come on down. The owner's excited. He's ready to go. They've been promoting it and stuff and put out all our flyers and such. So anything you want to plug before we do get out of here?
No, I'm very happy. Very happy with the way that things are going.
Cool.
Nothing to plug.
All right. Well, I'll plug it for him. Make sure you checked out Locked On Saints for all your daily coverage with Ross Jackson.
Thanks,
and obviously you can get all the written work, Saints News Network, Saints on Sports Illustrated, all the recaps, observations there, past shows. We got all the chapters. It's all available on the pod. Like, subscribe. Don't forget to use that Amazon link. That helps the show out and such. Guys have been doing good job with that, but it's a free way to do it without us doing like a subscription, Patreon, all this other stuff. So, but that's going to do it for us. Day 9 of Saints training camp is in the books. We will be back. Maybe if I put my words together, we will be back on Sunday for another episode, and we will be breaking down all the Saints training camp, latest and greatest. That'll do it for us today. On behalf of Ross Jackson, John Hendricks, signing out.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.